fait que nous soyons ici aujourd'hui à Dar es Salaam, que demain il y ait un engagement au plus haut niveau des États africains, je pense que je reste confiant pour viongozi na wakuu wa nchi na serikali ya Afrika, nina imani kwamba tutaweza kufikia malengo yetu hapa Tanzania, na tuonyesha kwamba kama kuna nia ya dhati ya kisiasa basi mengine yatafuata. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you for giving us the linkages between agriculture and the other whole of economy thing. So as we all know, nothing really happens without finance. That's the reason why we're here as well. And it gives me great pleasure to now hand over to my Minister of Finance and also
waziri wangu wa fedha.
So Mr. Edu, how do you see
Please,
this?
can you adjust a little bit your microphone because we can't hear him here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I was saying that nothing really happens without finance, and that's why we're lucky today to have both energy and finance
kupatikana bila
So I'm
fedha.
going to
Ndio maana
ask
tuna
the
waziri wa
same
fedha
question
hapa.
of
Nitauliza maswali hayo kwa waziri Edu, waziri wa fedha ambaye pia ni mratibu wa uchumi.
Always talk about economic growth. You always talk about empowerment. So how does this energy compact process bring that all together?
Hii mipango ya nishati na taja yote pamoja.
All that you're doing.
Asante sana kwa kazi yote ambayo unafanya kwenye SFO. Naomba nianze kwa kumshukuru mwenyeji wetu, lakini pia naibu waziri mkuu wa Tanzania na serikali na wananchi wa Tanzania kwa makaribisho mazuri na ukarimu ambao tumeupata tangu tulipofika hapa. Naomba sasa nitambue Profesa Shimbajo ambaye ni makamu wa rais mstaafu. Tunazungumzia kuhusu fedha na mwenyekiti wa Benki ya Maendeleo ya Kiislamu. Karibu sana mheshimiwa.
This is a very important, very critical and a very urgent conversation.
Ni mkutano muhimu sana na majadiliano muhimu sana, na ni muhimu kwa sababu tunazungumzia ukuaji wa uchumi, lakini pia ni muhimu kwa sababu ya nishati safi ya kupikia na kwa ajili ya kukuza afya za binadamu. Kwa hiyo tumeyasikia mambo mengi tangu asubuhi ambayo ni muhimu sana. Nataka nizungumzie yale ambayo tumeyapata leo asubuhi. Kwanza kabisa Racha
in passing, I would say, he mentioned that
alitaja kwamba kile ambacho ningeweza kusema kwamba ulimwengu hauna mwelekeo mzuri kuhusu masuala ambayo tunazungumzia leo.
The risk of global state conflict.
Tunazungumzia zaidi kuhusu migogoro ya kibiashara na swala zima la akili mnemba, lakini pia na mambo ya taarifa. Kwa hiyo ni lazima tufanye haya sisi wenyewe, na ni muhimu kwamba sisi tuko hapa na rais wa Nigeria yuko hapa ni nchi kubwa kabisa, lakini wapo pia kwa nchi zingine za Afrika wakijizatiti kutekeleza mpango huu au ajenda hii. Rais wa Benki ya Dunia alisema kwamba umeme ni haki za binadamu, akizungumzia utu wa mtu, ubora wa maisha ya watu na umuhimu mkubwa wa kuwapa watu wetu umeme. Ni haki yao, kwa hiyo ni lazima tuwape haki yao hiyo na tufanye haraka. Na kwa kweli rais wa Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika alisema nishati ni kama damu mwilini. Kwa hiyo huwezi kufanya chochote bila kuwa na nishati. Kwa hiyo ukuaji wa uchumi na kuyafikia malengo ya maendeleo endelevu ambayo tunataka kuyafikia bila upatikanaji mkubwa wa nishati, hauwezi kufikia mapato makubwa. Na sote ambacho tumekidhamiria ni kukuza uchumi wetu kwa haraka iwezekanavyo, kutengeneza ajira, kuinua maisha ya watu wetu kutoka kwenye umasikini. Kwa hiyo mada hii ya leo ni ya msingi kabisa, hasa kwa ajili ya ukuaji na maendeleo ambayo tunayatafuta. Asante sana waziri, asante kwa kuhusisha na malengo ya maendeleo endelevu.
Because it doesn't have access to power. So I'm going to move on to another Minister of Finance.
Nitaendelea kwa waziri mwingine wa fedha, waziri kutoka Zambia. Asante kwa kuwepo hapa nasi. Jambo moja wapo ambalo tumekuwa tumelifurahia ni kuangalia jinsi ambavyo mpango wa nishati wa Zambia ulivyo na malengo makubwa, na unaonaje hii agenda 300 na
Thank you very much, and
asante sana na namsalimia kila mmoja hapa.
I think basically what you are saying
nadhani kile unachokisema kimsingi ni kwamba ni kwa nini Zambia iko hapa au tuko hapa kwenye mkakati huu, na tunategemea nini kutokana na mkutano huu. Najibu ni kama lifuatalo. Tupo hapa kwa sababu tuna tatizo la nishati kule Zambia, na uwepo wetu hapa unaakisi matamanio yetu kwamba mkakati huu uwe ni sehemu ya ufumbuzi tunaoutafuta.
What is the problem?
Na tatizo ni nini kule Zambia? Tatizo ni kwamba kwa miaka mingi tuliamini kwamba tulikuwa na umeme wa kutosha kabisa kule Zambia, na tulikuwa tukiuza nje umeme, tukadhani tuko sawa. Lakini baada ya hapo mambo yamebadilika. Kitu kimoja ambacho kimebadilika cha kwanza ni kwamba katika kuzalisha madini ambayo ni muhimu kwa sababu ya uchumi wa dunia, tupo kwenye mwelekeo wa kuongeza maradufu uzalishaji wa shaba kwa miaka 10 ijayo, na hiyo inahitaji umeme. Na cha pili ambacho kimetokea, ingawa tunaamini kwamba tunakuwa na umeme mwingi, mwaka uliopita tulikuwa na ukame mkali sana, na napenda kuwashukuru wa Tanzania kwa kutupatia chakula, na washukuru sana. Lakini sehemu ya tatizo hilo ni kwamba uzalishaji wa umeme wetu ulishuka kwa 50%.
So mining is a problem, irrigation is a problem,
uchimbaji madini ni tatizo, umwagiliaji, kilimo cha umwagiliaji hakiwezekani, na viwanda ni tatizo. Kwa haya ndio matatizo makubwa ambayo yanatukabili, na kwa sasa tunaamini kwamba swala muhimu kabisa ni kuongeza uzalishaji wa umeme. Kwa hiyo kwa sababu madini yanahitaji umeme zaidi, lakini pia viwanda vinahitaji umeme zaidi, lakini lazima tupunguze utegemezi kwenye nishati ya na maji, tuzalishe zaidi umeme, na tufanye hivyo kwa kutumia vyanzo vingine vya nishati. Na tutegemea kwenye mkutano huu ni kwamba tumefanya mabadiliko makubwa. Mheshimiwa Waziri wa Nishati, msikilize mchana huu, atataja baadhi ya mabadiliko ambayo tumefanya. Na kwa ufupi naweza kusema kwamba ninyi watu wa sekta binafsi mtayafurahia sana mageuzi hayo. Njooni Zambia muwekeze kwenye nishati, mtakuwa matajiri sana, na baada ya hapo mtakuja kuishukuru Tanzania kwa kuandaa mkutano kama huu.
So on top of that,
zaidi ya hapo,
in our delegation from Zambia,
katika ujumbe wetu kutoka Zambia tuna wafanyabiashara 40 ambao wapo katika sekta ya nishati, wapo hapa, na nadhani watazungumza, kwa sababu wakati mwingine sisi watu wa serikali tunazungumza miongoni mwetu, lakini hatuihusishi sekta binafsi. Wakati huu mara hii sekta binafsi kutoka Zambia wapo. Naomba mkutane nao, muangalie mageuzi ambayo yafanyika Zambia, msikie kuhusu fursa ambazo zipo, na pia mje kuwekeza. Kwa kifupi, nachotegemea kutoka kwenye kongamano hili ni kwa sekta binafsi kuja na kuwekeza katika sekta ya nishati Zambia. Asante sana na kushukuru pia kwa kutaja umuhimu wa mkakati huu wa nishati na pia jukumu lako kwenye masuala ya madini. Sasa ninakwenda nizungumzie Kenya. Waziri wadai miezi michache iliyopita tulikuwa kusherehekea mpango wenu
yourselves and Kenyan government benefiting
hasa
from the
serikali yako itanufaika vipi na mpango huu wa agenda 300?
Thank you very much.
Sana.
And
na
as Kenya, we are indeed very pleased.
Kenya tumefurahi sana
be participants
kuwa
in
washiriki
this
katika
important summit.
Mkutano huu muhimu.
And
na
as a country,
kama nchi,
we do not see a conflict.
Hatuoni kama kuna mgogoro au tofauti kati
ya
agenda 300 na ile mpango wetu wa kitaifa.
As many of you may know,
kama wengi mnavyofahamu, Kenya
has developed a fairly robust Kenya national electrification strategy.
Ina mkakati madhubuti kabisa wa kusambaza umeme, lakini pia tuna mpango wa nishati wa kitaifa
we envisage
ambao tunapanga tunategemea kwamba utatupelekea kuyafikia malengo yetu ya kuhakikisha upatikanaji wa umeme kwa watu wetu wote kwa ifikapo 2030. Tunapozungumza hapa na mpango wetu wa kusambaza umeme kitaifa tumefikia 75%.
Also important,
lakini muhimu
to point out
that
our national grid is
mfumo wetu wa umeme
over 90% green.
Ni nishati safi,
in our view,
umeme safi kwa
this is a continuing journey.
98.
This is a continuing journey in the sense that
it's
incumbent upon all of us,
kwa sababu ni jukumu
Kenya and other countries on the continent,
sisi kama Kenya na nchi zingine katika bara la Afrika kuchukua hatua za makusudi, kuwa jitihada za makusudi kuelekea kufikia agenda hii muhimu sana,
achieving access or connecting 300 million Africans
wa Afrika milioni 300 kwenye
Afrika, na tunaweza kuahidi dola bilioni 2.6. Nilikuwa nasubiri ahadi hiyo kwa hamu sana. Kwa sasa itakuwa bilioni 1 kutoka benki na kutoka sekta binafsi tutakuwa kwa ajili ya milioni 150 kwa milioni 150, na fedha nyingine zitakuwa kwa ajili ya taasisi ya mikopo ya IDRC na lakini pia mfuko wa dhamana pamoja na bima. Vyote hivyo ISEC itatoa huduma za bima na dhamana kwa miradi ambayo itakuwa karibia dola bilioni 2 kwa ajili ya shughuli zote hizi zinazohusiana na nishati au umeme Afrika. Tumedhamiria na tunalenga kufanya zaidi ya hapa na kuongeza idadi ya nchi, na hizi sio takwimu tu, lakini tunataka kuhakikisha kwamba idadi ya taasisi ziweze kuongezeka na kunufaika na fedha hizi. Lakini pia tunawekeza zaidi katika kuwa na ushirikiano bora zaidi kati ya Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika pamoja na Benki ya Dunia na washirika wengine wa kimataifa kwa ajili ya kuhakikisha kwamba tunakuwa na mifumo ya kuaminika, lakini pia utekelezaji wa kuaminika katika taratibu zetu, ili tuweze kuhakikisha kwamba tunaimarisha ushirikiano na jitihada zetu za pamoja. Tunatakiwa kuhakikisha tunasaidiana sisi kwa sisi, kuhakikisha kwamba tunakuwa na nguvu ya pamoja na kuzijengea uwezo baadhi ya nchi na upatikanaji wa fedha, kwa sababu kuna baadhi ya nchi zina changamoto, ili kuhakikisha kwamba kila nchi ina jambo la kipekee linaloweza kulifanya. Hakuna nchi inaweza kufanya peke yake, bali kwa pamoja pamoja tunaweza tukafanya mambo mengi na kwa mafanikio. Kwa hiyo kwa sasa tunatakiwa kujielekeza zaidi katika nishati, kwa sababu ni kichocheo muhimu cha maendeleo ya nchi zetu. Asante sana. Jambo la muhimu alilolisisitiza, tumesikiliza mambo mengi na masuala ya upatikanaji wa fedha ni mambo ya muhimu sana, lakini jambo jingine ni kuhakikisha kwamba tunakuwa na uwezo wa kupata mitaji, na haya ni mambo ndiyo ambayo ni vichocheo vya kutuwezesha kuharakisha upatikanaji wa fedha, kiasi kidogo cha fedha kwa ajili ya miradi midogo midogo. Kwa tunatakiwa kuhakikisha tunajielekeza katika aina hizi mbalimbali za mitaji, kama vile Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika, Benki ya Dunia na taasisi nyingine za kifedha. Napenda sasa ni muombe mwenzangu kutoka Italy, Senator Barbaro anatoa hotuba kwa Kiitaliano. Mwaka jana aliandaa mkutano kati ya Afrika na Italia kwa ajili ya kuongeza kwa kiwango kikubwa uwekezaji Afrika, ikiwemo sekta ya nishati. Kwa hiyo kwa uelewa wangu ni kwamba Benki ya Maendeleo ya Italia inalenga kujielekeza katika uwekezaji huu. Unaweza kutueleza ni namna gani serikali ya Italia na NCDP wanaweza?
Tanto saluto I colleghi e le autorità presenti. Il tema dell'accesso all'energia,
swala la upatikanaji wa nishati Afrika ni jambo la muhimu sana na la kimkakati kwa SADC, na hasa kujielekeza yetu ya kijiografia kama ilivyopangwa kwenye mpango yetu, na mpango huu unalenga kushirikiana na jamii za Kiafrika na
umani, culturali e materiali di cui l'Africa dispone.
Ni watu na maliasili za Kiafrika tayari kuisaidia Afrika. Inapenda kujielekeza zaidi katika kutafuta njia za kusafiri pamoja kwa ajili ya kufanikisha malengo haya. Kwa ajili ya kuimarisha safari hii ya pamoja, tunatumaini kuwa na ushirikiano zaidi kwa kutumia nyenzo za mashirika ya kimataifa zilizoandaliwa na jumuiya ya kimataifa kwa maslahi ya Afrika na jamii zake. Na kwa ajili ya kulinda utamaduni huu, tunahitaji kuwa na mifumo bora ya kuiongoza Italia kwa ajili ya kuweza kuandaa ushirikiano bora barani Afrika. Jitihada hizi zinazohusiana na nishati zinatekelezwa zikizingatia malengo yafuatayo: kupanua upatikanaji wa umeme, kuandaa mifumo ya upatikanaji wa umeme kwa ajili ya viwanda, ikiwemo nishati jadidifu, lakini pamoja kuimarisha miundombinu ya usambazaji wa umeme pamoja na kujenga uwezo wa kuunganisha umeme kati ya Afrika na Ulaya, kutoa mafunzo kwenye sekta ya nishati kwa ajili ya kutengeneza ajira, lakini pamoja na kuandaa teknolojia ya nishati safi ya kupikia kwa ajili ya watu bilioni 1 Afrika kwa ajili ya kuendana na mazingira ya kiafya na athari za kimazingira na kiafya. Na dhamira hii ni kuonyesha dhamira yetu ya ajenda 300. Afrika Italia imedhamiria katika ajenda 300 kwa ajili ya kuhakikisha kwamba kuna kuwepo na mikakati ya pamoja upatikanaji wa fedha pamoja na Benki ya Dunia, Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika pamoja na washirika wengine. Mahususi zaidi, Italia imeshaanzisha kikosi kazi cha kushirikiana na Benki ya Dunia kutafuta njia mbalimbali za kupata afua mbalimbali kwa Kongo, Msumbiji, Ethiopia, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya na Uganda, lakini pia kuwa na programu mbalimbali za mataifa mbalimbali kwa ajili ya kuharakisha upatikanaji wa nishati safi na endelevu ya umeme Ascent. Pamoja na miradi hiyo ni pamoja na usambazaji wa umeme, mifumo ya kidigitali na kuimarisha nishati Cote d'Ivoire pamoja na Congo Brazzaville. Lakini kuhusiana na swala hili tunatarajia kueleza umuhimu wa kuwa na mfumo ya pamoja upatikanaji wa fedha kwa ajili ya kuwa na vipaumbele vya umeme na kuharakisha mafanikio katika sekta hii. Tunatarajia kwamba mapendekezo ya awali ya upatikanaji wa fedha yanaweza yakapitishwa ndani ya mwaka mmoja kwa kuratibiwa kwa karibu pamoja na Benki ya Dunia na serikali washirika kama sehemu ya serikali ya Italia kupitia mpango wa Matley. Italy ni mshirika mzuri wa Benki ya Dunia katika kupanua upatikanaji wa umeme na imechangia vikubwa mchango wake katika shirika la maendeleo la dunia kwa asilimia 28 kwa kupitia ida 21. Mwishoni naomba kusisitiza mpango wa Matley kuhusiana na kusafirisha nishati kutoka Afrika ya Kaskazini kwenda nchi za Italy na Ulaya kwa kupitia mradi wa kuunganisha Afrika na Ulaya kupitia nishati safi inayofadhiliwa na Benki ya Dunia na Kamisheni ya Umoja wa Ulaya kama sehemu ya kuunganisha miundombinu kama ALMED, lakini pia kuangalia uwezekano wa kuunganisha pamoja ajenda 300 na nyenzo mbalimbali za Wizara ya Mazingira na kama SMAP kama programu ya kusaidia nishati. Tumeshatenga euro milioni 10 kwa ajili ya kuendeleza miradi hiyo. Kwa miaka 4 iliyopita programu hii tayari imeshakusanya dola bilioni 19 kwa kusaidiwa na wafadhili wa nje kwa ajili ya kujenga uwezo wa nishati jadidifu. Programu ya upatikanaji wa nishati safi kwa kushirikiana na shirika la fedha duniani IFC katika kusaidia nishati jadidifu kwa kuhakikisha kwamba kuna kuwepo na umeme nje ya grid ya taifa kwa kushirikiana na wadau au sekta binafsi kwa kupitia Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika, kwa maendeleo endelevu wa Afrika SEFA, ambapo tayari tumeshatenga euro milioni 12 kwa ajili ya kusaidia miradi ya nishati jadidifu pamoja na ufanisi wa nishati ya umeme pamoja na misheni hii au ajenda hii ya 300 kama nguzo zake muhimu. Mchakato huu wa upatikanaji wa fedha wa Roma, Italia tayari imeshachangia euro milioni 47 kama ruzuku na euro milioni 90 kama mikopo nafuu. Na mwishoni, miongoni mwa mambo mengi, Italia imekuwa ikisaidia Afrika. Napenda niwakumbushe kwamba tayari tumekuwa sehemu ya washirika wa UNDP katika utekelezaji wa miradi yake. Napenda kusisitiza kuhusu nyenzo hizi muhimu za ushirikiano. Naomba kuhakikishieni kwamba Italia iko pamoja nanyi. Asante sana. Kuna hoja ya muhimu napenda kuelezea hapa kuhusu mitaji kwamba dola bilioni 10 ambazo ni kwa kushirikiana na Benki ya Dunia ni sehemu ya ushirikiano, kwamba mnatarajia kutafuta bilioni 19 dola za Kimarekani kwa ajili ya kusaidia miradi ya nishati, na hili ni jambo la muhimu sana kwa ajili ya upatikanaji wa fedha muhimu kwa ajili ya miradi hii. Asante sana kwa afua hii. Naomba sasa ni Dr. Khan kuhusu mifuko ya OPEC. Ni kwa kiasi gani ajenda hii 300 inaweza kuwa kichocheo cha mabadiliko na ni namna gani inaweza kuwa msaada kwa ajenda 300? Umuhimu wa kuwa wa mwisho,
hakuna kilichobaki cha kuahidi. Kwa hiyo ninafurahi sana kukujibu. Kwa niaba ya rais ya taasisi ya OPIC Dr. Hamid Khalifa, ningependa kwanza kabisa kutoa shukrani zangu za dhati kwa mamlaka na serikali ya Tanzania na Tanzania kwa ukarimu, lakini pia kwa waandaaji wa mkutano huu kwa kualika OPEC Fund kuwepo katika mkutano huu. Kwangu mimi binafsi, naomba mniruhusu kusema kwamba ni kitu cha muhimu sana kuwa kwenye mkutano huu ambao unabeba jina la kiongozi ambaye aliendelea kutoa hamasa sio tu kwa Tanzania lakini kwa mataifa mengine. Kwa hivyo nikirejea kwako kwa swali lako, na dhani kwamba ninaweza kusema kwamba sio swala la kusema ni namna gani, lakini nadhani inatakiwa kuwa ni swala la kuleta mabadiliko makubwa kwa kuangalia ukubwa wa tatizo lenyewe na changamoto zake. Hakuna njia mbadala zaidi ya ajenda 300 kuwa chanzo cha mabadiliko. Najua sababu ya kuamini hivyo ni kwamba kwa upande mmoja tuna maono makubwa ambayo kinara wake ni taasisi za kifedha za kibara ndani ya bara Afrika, na kwa upande mwingine tunao pia tunayo utashi na kutoka kwa taasisi zingine za kimataifa kuwezesha upatikanaji wa huduma za nishati kwa watu wake ili kupata nishati safi. Kwa hiyo tukiunganisha mambo haya mawili inatufanya tuamini kwamba yapo matumaini kwamba mpango
na programu zake kama vile kwa mfano miundombinu ya kijani na programu nyingine kama hizo. Sasa kwa nini tunafanya hivyo? Tunafanya hivyo sio kwa sababu ya mashirikiano yetu ya kikanda, lakini tunafanya hivyo kwa sababu chaneli sahihi kupitia changamoto za kupitia mifumo ya kimataifa zinatoa fursa nzuri ya sisi kuweza kuwa na ufanisi katika kile tunachokifanya. Sio kwa sababu tu tunazipenda benki, lakini kwamba tunaamini benki zinaweza kuwa njia sahihi za kuweza kugusa mustakabali. Kwa hiyo nadhani cha mwisho nachotaka kusema hapa ni kwamba nimesikia kwa wengine waliokuja hapa kusema na pia katika vipindi vya upunguzi kwamba tunahitaji kupata fedha zaidi za kuweka katika mfumo. Hilo ni sahihi, lakini lazima tutambue kwamba tunahitaji kutambua kwamba matumizi sahihi ya fedha zilizopo ambazo zimeshatolewa ni jambo la msingi pia na lenyewe. Kwa hiyo kwa sisi wabia ambao tunaitwa wafadhili kwa mfano, kwamba tunatakiwa tufanye mengi na kutoa fedha zaidi na kutoa ujizatiti kutoka kwa upande wetu. Tunaamini kwamba kwa fedha ambazo zilizopo na zenyewe zifanyiwe kazi aminifu kabisa, ndio tutafanya kazi kwa upande wetu kama wabia na wadau. Lakini pia tunathamini sana kile ambacho ajenda 300 inafanya, na mkutano huu wa nishati hapa. Nadhani lazima tuwe tuna sheria sahihi. Kwa nini wawekezaji wanataka kuwekeza? Ni kwa sababu wanataka kupata fedha zaidi. Sasa kama kutakuwa kuna changamoto za uwekezaji, wanaweza wasiwekeze. Miongoni mwa changamoto zinaweza kupunguzwa kwa kupitia mageuzi tunaweza kufanya katika nchi yetu. Kingine ni kuweka sheria na taratibu katika nchi wanachama katika bara la Afrika ambazo ni rahisi zaidi. Nukta yangu ya mwisho ya kusema ni kwamba uwepo wetu hapa katika upande wa nishati hapa Afrika ni kwamba kuna miradi mingi inatokea hapa na ni mizuri. Mimi hiyo hainitishe, lakini nadhani tunatakiwa kuwa na uratibu wa pamoja. Kwa hiyo ninadhani kabisa kwamba ajenda 300 ina vigezo vyote vya kutoa mwamvuli wa miradi yote ya kuleta nishati hapa Afrika. Kwa hiyo zitatoa uratibu ambao unahitajika, na uratibu huu ninadhani haujawahi kufanyika Berlin au Oslo au Washington. Nadhani lazima ifanyike katika miji mikuu ya Afrika hapa, na nina uhakika mtafika hatua ya kupata marafiki wakubwa sana watakaokaa upande wenu.
Asante sana. Ushirikiano ni jambo muhimu na ndio utakaloliwezesha kufanikisha haya. Naomba tuende sasa Umoja wa Ulaya. Bwana Staso, upatikanaji wa umeme sio changamoto kwa Kamisheni ya Umoja wa Ulaya, kwa sababu Umoja wa Ulaya wameshasaidia katika uwekezaji wa masuala ya umeme, lakini pia ujumuishi katika huduma za umeme, lakini hivi karibuni miradi mikubwa ya umeme jadidifu Afrika. Unaweza kutueleza ni kwa namna gani Umoja wa Ulaya wameweza kusaidia umeme Afrika? Asante sana. Na napenda kuipongeza Tanzania lakini pia na washirika walioisaidia serikali ya Tanzania katika kuandaa mkutano huu. Umoja wa Ulaya umekuwa mstari wa mbele katika kusaidia masuala ya umeme kwa miaka mingi. Tumekuwa na uzoefu wetu kwa muda mrefu, tumeshafanya mambo mengi, lakini hata hivyo tumeshajifunza kwamba tunapaswa kushirikiana na wadau wengine kama vile taasisi za kimataifa za uwekezaji, taasisi za fedha, wasimamizi na wadhibiti pamoja na wadau wengine, na tunatakiwa kuwa na ufanisi na kuweza kushughulikia changamoto mbalimbali na kutengeneza mazingira wezeshi na rafiki ya kuvutia sekta binafsi. Kuna jitihada nyingi ambazo tayari zimeshafanyika na hivyo tunapojielekeza katika ajenda hii ya 300 tunatakiwa kuweka vipaumbele pamoja na ahadi mbalimbali za nchi zetu. Tulizindua mpango wetu mwaka 2023 ambapo tulitenga bilioni 50 kwa ajili ya miradi ya kuunganisha umeme vijijini, lakini pia kuwa na mfumo bora zaidi. Hata hivyo tulibainisha changamoto mbalimbali. Kwanza kabisa napenda kuungana na mwenzangu wa Asasi ya Maendeleo ya Afrika. Tunakubaliana kwamba kujumuisha pamoja rasilimali fedha kwa ajili ya kutumika na taasisi zetu kwa kusimamiwa na Benki ya Maendeleo ya Umoja wa Ulaya ambayo iko hapa leo, tunalenga kwa pamoja kupata mafanikio. Jambo la kwanza au mfano wa kwanza ni kushirikiana kati ya Ulaya na Afrika kwa ajili ya kuwa na jitihada mbalimbali zilizohusisha nchi 12 za Umoja wa Ulaya pamoja na Benki ya Maendeleo ya Ulaya. Tuliweza kwa pamoja kupata gigabytes 50 kwa kupitia mfumo huu wa uzalishaji wa umeme jadidifu, na tunalenga kufanikia hilo hadi mwaka 2030. Tumeshakuwa na uwekezaji wa kutosha wa nishati jadidifu. Tumeshawekeza dola bilioni 20 hadi mwaka 2021 hadi mwaka 2027. Tunatarajia kutenga fedha zaidi kama ruzuku kwa ajili ya miradi ya sekta binafsi kuweza kushiriki katika nishati. tunaendelea kuwa na miradi mbalimbali ya kupunguza hasara katika uwekezaji na kuleta ufanisi, na tunalenga kufanya kazi hizi katika muktadha huu wa kuweza kutengeneza mazingira bora ya kibiashara kwa ajili ya kuvutia washirika wengi zaidi. Kwa mfano, katika siku hizi mbili za mkutano wetu tunatakiwa kujielekeza katika ngazi ya kisera kuweza kutanua miradi yetu wa Afrika, na rais wangu von der Leyen ameweza kujielekeza zaidi kufanya kazi pamoja na mkurugenzi wa asasi ya kimataifa ya nishati kuelekeza nguvu zao katika nishati. Rais wetu wa Umoja wa Ulaya amejielekeza katika kutafuta fedha kwa ajili ya miradi zaidi ya nishati jadidifu, na tayari kwenye kikao cha nchi 180 cha mazingira COP28 tulikubaliana kuwa na miradi zaidi ya nishati jadidifu duniani kote. Kwa hiyo waziri wa nishati wa Afrika Kusini asubuhi hii alieleza kuhusu miradi hiyo, na rais wetu wa Umoja wa Ulaya aliweza kukutana na Rais Ramaphosa katika kushirikiana kwenye kupanua huduma za upatikanaji wa umeme katika mkutano wa G20 Novemba 2024, na kampeni hii inaendelea, na Novemba 2027 tutakutana Cape Town, na tutataka tuone kwamba jitihada hizi ni za pande zote mbili ili tuweze kupata mafanikio. Asante. Nimekumbushwa kwamba tunaomba tuweze kupata hitimisho kwa sekunde kadhaa. Mheshimiwa Sanja, programu hii ya fedha za dhamana na ruzuku, tuna furaha kwanza kabisa nianze kueleza katika mazingira tofauti kwamba tumekuwa na ujumbe ulio wa wazi kabisa kutoka nchi za Kiafrika, sekta binafsi, benki za kimaendeleo, kwamba sisi kama wafadhili tunatakiwa kuwa makini namna ya kusimamia fedha za ufadhili, kwa sababu kiwango hiki cha fedha kinapokuwa kidogo, tuhakishe tuone namna gani tunahimiza matumizi ya fedha hii kupitia sekta binafsi ili tuweze kupata uhakika wa mikopo na dhamana. Tunatakiwa kuangalia namna tunaweza kupata fedha kutoka kwenye mfuko. Tulizindua mwaka jana mapendekezo mbalimbali ya miradi. Tulipata mapendekezo mengi kuhusiana na mifuko ya dhamana, na tunatarajia kuiandaa mifuko hiyo, na hoja ya msingi ni uwekezaji katika nishati jadidifu, na tunafurahi kuwa sehemu ya kuchangia katika mifuko hii ya fedha za dhamana. Tunatumaini kwamba tutaweza kusaidia upatikanaji wa mitaji kwa ajili ya uwekezaji kutekeleza mipango hii. Bwana B. Skite, kuhusiana na nishati ya kuaminika, safi ya kupikia, ipo kwenye mipango ya maendeleo endelevu, na bahati mbaya kwamba miradi hii ya nishati haijapangiliwa vizuri, na hasa miradi ya nishati safi ya kupikia. Kwa tunatakiwa kuwa na mipango ya kimataifa ya usambazaji wa umeme. Tunatakiwa kujielekeza zaidi katika nishati safi ya kupikia. Inahitaji msaada zaidi, na hili linapaswa kuwa kutekelezwa kwa ziada zaidi ya mipango yetu tunayofanya sasa. Jambo ambalo nataka kulisema ni kwamba tunatakiwa kutenganisha mipango hii na kuimarisha ushirikiano, na ili tuweze kupata mafanikio. Tumekuwa na mkutano muhimu kule mwisho wa mwezi Februari kule Afrika Kusini kujaribu kuangalia fursa kwenye taasisi za kifedha, na nadhani sote tumedhamiria kuhakikisha na fedha, na jambo la mwisho ni kubadilisha mitazamo yetu, sio katika ukumbi huu, lakini hicho baini kwamba mamilioni ya wanawake wa Kiafrika wamekuwa wakikabiliana na changamoto ya nishati na safi ya kupikia. Kwa tunaweza tukakabiliana na tatizo hilo kwa kuhakikisha kwamba tunakuwa na minyororo mizuri ya usambazaji wa nishati. Asante sana. Kuhusu majukwaa ya kimataifa, naamini katika majukwaa ya kitaifa, na hii ni njia mojawapo ya kutekeleza ajenda 300 kama ambavyo tumeshaeleza, na kupendekeza kuhusu ushirikiano wa kinishati kama nilivyo. Napenda kutaja Afrika Kusini kwa sababu tumefanya mengi kuhusiana na hilo, na tunahitaji kuwa na uratibu kwa taasisi zile zinazotoa fedha. Lakini la pili ni kwamba Afrika Kusini imekuwa kichocheo cha kufanikisha hili. Lakini jambo la tatu, tumekuwa na muunganiko kati ya mikopo nafuu, lakini kuwa na mipango mbalimbali ya upatikanaji wa fedha. Lakini jambo la 4 ni kama kitovu cha mafanikio ya upatikanaji huu wa umeme kama sera inavyoeleza, Afrika Kusini imekuwa tayari kutoa mafunzo kuhusu sheria za masuala ya nishati kwa wasambazaji wote wa umeme, na hii inafungua fursa ya masoko kwa washirika wengine. Na hoja ya mwisho ni kwamba tunatakiwa kuwa na uvumilivu wa kutosha. Miaka 2 iliyopita tulivyobaini kwamba Afrika Kusini itapata mafanikio, tumekuja kushuhudia kwamba kumekuwepo na mafanikio makubwa kutokana na uongozi mkubwa wa Ramaphosa kwa sababu ya kushughulikia masuala ya kisheria, na hayo yote yalipitishwa bungeni siku chache kabla ya uchaguzi, na katika nchi yetu hilo lisingeweza kufanyika, lakini kwa Afrika Kusini waliweza. Kwa bahati mbaya tunatakiwa kuhitimisha jopo letu kwa sababu ya muda, na washukuruni sana kwa michango yenu yenye tija na muhimu, na shukuruni sana kwa kutueleza uzoefu wenu. Na hivyo kwa sasa ningependa kumkaribisha Uchan ambaye ni afisa mtendaji mkuu wa shirika kimataifa la nishati kwa ajili ya neno la kufunga. Asante sana. Habari za mchana. Kwanza kabisa napenda kuishukuru serikali ya Tanzania kwa kuwa mwenyeji wa mkutano huu pamoja na washirika wote waliowezesha mkutano huu. Lakini kwa namna pekee napenda kuwashukuru wanajopo, wazungumzaji, wasimamizi wa majadiliano yetu kwa majadiliano muhimu na yenye tija. Mkutano huu na majadiliano haya yamekuwa yenye tija na muhimu sana. Lakini napenda nieleze hoja moja muhimu. Baadhi yenu mnafahamu kwamba ninatoka katika taasisi za mabenki ya kimataifa, na wengi mnalifahamu hilo. Lakini tumefanya mambo mengi kama washirika wa kimaendeleo, lakini hata hivyo hatujafanya kiasi cha kutosha. Je, tunaweza kujivunia kwamba tumeshinda vita dhidi ya mabadiliko ya tabia nchi na uhaba wa nishati? Lakini kwa bahati mbaya tumejikuta kwamba tuko nyuma ya wakati. Kwa hivyo kutana na asasi hii ya ushirikiano wa kimataifa wa nishati, tunahitaji mabadiliko makubwa katika sekta zote, asasi za huduma za kibinadamu, taasisi za benki za kimataifa. Kwa sasa hoja ya msingi ni ushirikiano kati ya sekta ya umma na sekta binafsi, na tunatakiwa tujielekeze katika mfumo unavyoweza kufanya kazi kwa tija. Napenda kukumbuka maneno ya katibu wetu kwamba tunahitaji kwenda kwa pamoja ili tuende mbali zaidi. Kwa hiyo washirika wote wa huduma za kibinadamu, taasisi zote, tunatakiwa kukutana pamoja ili tuweze kusaidia washirika wa kimaendeleo waweze kufanya zaidi na kwa ubora zaidi. Napenda kumshukuru kila mmoja, hasa wale waliotenga muda wao na nafasi zao katika kuandaa mkutano huu, na tumaini tutaendelea kufanya kazi zaidi. Na tumekuwa kwa muda mrefu tumekuwa tukiangalia dola milioni 6 na sasa tunaongelea mabilioni ya dola. Kwa tunahitaji kuendelea kufanya kazi kwa pamoja, na mwishoni tunatakiwa tujielekeze zaidi katika kupata msaada ya kitaalamu zaidi ili kuhakikisha kwamba fedha hizi zinazoweza kupatikana zikatumika vizuri na zikaleta tija na matokeo mazuri kwa miradi tutakayokuwa nayo. Asanteni sana. Mabibi na mabwana, naomba tuwapigie makofi mwenyekiti na mwongozaji wa mjadala na wanajopo, na kama ambavyo wanahama kwenye jukwaa letu sasa naomba sasa tukaribishe kundi la mwisho kabla tujaenda mapumziko ya chakula. Mabibi na mabwana, kumekuwepo na mtiririko wa majadiliano kwa asasi za kiraia. Tunaomba niwakaribishe sasa washirika kutoka asasi za kiraia waweze kutueleza maono yao kwa upande wa asasi za kiraia. Naomba niwakaribishe jukwaani mkurugenzi wa Haki Rasilimali Bwana Adam Anthony.
Yes, thank you very much.
Karibu sana. Naomba tumpigie makofi Anthony.
Quickly followed by Madame
na baadaye kutakuwepo na Sherap Swai. Yeye ni mdau wa masuala ya nishati na amefanya kazi na shirika la Umoja Mataifa la FCC. Na karibu sana.
Thank you. Your Excellencies,
waheshimiwa wajumbe wa diwani, mabibi na mabwana, habari za mchana. Tukizingatia kwamba karibu watu milioni 6 chini ya jangwa, kusini mwa jangwa la Sahara hawana uwezo wa kupata umeme. Hii ni karibu 83% ya watu wa ulimwengu ambao hawajapata umeme. Na tukijua kwamba pasipo kupata umeme au nishati ya kuaminika na ya bei nafuu, nchi zilizopo kusini mwa jangwa la Sahara zina changamoto kutokuweza kufikia malengo yao ya kimaendeleo, na hivyo kushindwa kuwatoa wengine kutoka katika limbi la umaskini. Tukijua kwamba Afrika ina vyanzo vingi vya nishati jadidifu, karibu 60% ya maeneo yenye nishati ya juu yakipatikana hapa Afrika. Na hivyo kuna umuhimu wa kila sababu kuwekeza katika nishati inayoweza kupatikana kwa bei rahisi zaidi na ya uhakika kwa watu wetu ili kuleta maendeleo. Kwa tunatambua pia kazi ya Benki ya Dunia na Benki ya Maendeleo ya Afrika ambao wamekubali kujizatiti kuhakikisha watu zaidi ya milioni 300 wanatoka katika giza mpaka kufikia mwaka 2030, na kwamba mkutano huu leo uko katika kuhakikisha kwamba unahamasisha utashi wa kisiasa na wa kifedha ili tuweze kuwasaidia watu wa bara la Afrika kuweza kupata nishati ili wapate fursa za kimaendeleo ya kiuchumi na ya kijamii. Na hivyo kwa kuwa tumekubali njozi ya 2060 ya Umoja wa Afrika ili kuweza kuvuna rasilimali za nishati hapa Afrika kwa namna rahisi na jadidifu na ambayo ni endelevu inayoheshimu mazingira, tukizingatia pia kwamba kuna ajenda ya 2030 ya maendeleo ya Umoja wa Afrika ambako mazingira ya kuishi ni imara, ni jadidi na ambako kuna uwezo wa kila mtu kufikia nishati. Pia tukikumbuka kwamba kuna goli namba 7 la magoli ya milenia ya maendeleo likitaka kuhakikisha kila mtu aweze kupata nishati ya kileo ya nishati ya kileo inayofikiwa kwa watu wote na ya gharama nafuu. Hivyo kwa sababu ya utangulizi huo, hayo yaliyojadiliwa na mjadala wa asasi za kiraia mwezi wa kwanza mwaka huu, sisi asasi za kiraia tumekubaliana kuchukua njia ifuatayo inayoweka watu mbele, ambayo haimwachi mtu yeyote nyuma na ambayo haiathiri maendeleo ya watu na sio tu ya sayari. nitamkaribisha mwenzangu aweze kuendelea. Waheshimiwa mabibi na mabwana, wajumbe wa miradi, kwa niaba ya asasi za kiraia za Afrika, pendekezo letu ni haya yafuatayo: moja, uwekezaji lazima uwe jumuishi na shirikishi. Lazima uweze kuhakikisha umeme kama inawezekana unafika maeneo yote na kanda zote, na kwa namna ambayo ni endelevu na ya bei nafuu na ya kuaminika. Lakini pia tunaomba nchi za Afrika zitoe utashi wa kisiasa wa kuhakikisha watu milioni 300 wanafikiwa na umeme, lakini kuhakikisha kwamba tunatumia vyanzo safi na jadidifu vya nishati ya umeme. Ukiangalia ukubwa wa mkutano huu ni kwamba lazima kuwa kuna namna sahihi na thabiti ya asasi za kiraia na umma kushiriki katika kusimamia na kuangalia uendelevu na utekelezaji wa makubaliano ya mkutano huu. Zaidi kuhakikisha kwamba kuna uaminifu wa matumizi ya data katika nchi mahususi, kuonesha kwamba wanawake na vijana wana uwezo wa kufikia nishati, kuongeza nguvu katika uwazi na uwajibikaji katika kila nyanja ya ajenda 300, hasa katika utekelezaji wake, hasa katika wadau tofauti tofauti kushiriki katika kuangalia mwenendo wa ajenda hii. Tunapendekeza kwamba kwa kadiri inavyowezekana ajenda 300 na utekelezaji wake uongozwe na nchi za Afrika na uongozwe kwa malighafi zinazopatikana kutoka Afrika. Tunapendekeza kwamba mkakati huu uleteleze mabadiliko ya sera ambazo zinaleta mifumo imara na thabiti ya nishati ambayo itafanya kuwa kuna umeme nafuu kwa jamii zote, hasa kwa wanawake na vijana. Pia tunasema kwamba programu hii lazima iruhusu asasi za kiraia zishiriki haraka inavyowezekana na kumiliki mradi huu. Tunapendekeza kwamba ajenda 300 hasa kwa upande wa wataalamu wa kiufundi wa Afrika na hasa upande binafsi na asasi za kiraia wenye uzoefu wa kiufundi katika kushiriki na kuwahusisha wananchi. Tunapenda pia kusema katika kiini cha utekelezaji wa ajenda hii lazima kuwe kuna kutoa kipaumbele cha matumizi ya nishati jadidifu, nishati endelevu. Pia tunapendekeza kuwe kuna kanzidata ambayo itakuwa ikitoa sasisho za miradi na uwekezaji wake pamoja na ufadhili wake, ili tuweze kupata mrejesho kutoka kwa wadau husika. Tunapendekeza kwa nguvu kabisa kwamba lazima ushiriki wa wanawake na vijana sio tu kutumia nishati katika kuwasha taa, lakini pia katika kilimo na shughuli nyingine za kiuchumi uongezewe nguvu. Kwa hiyo sisi tunachojitoa kama asasi za kiraia, tunawaambia wakuu wa nchi kwamba tutajizatiti kushiriki katika maendeleo endelevu yanayotoa nishati yenye bei nafuu kwa Waafrika. Tunampongeza sana Anthony pamoja na Madam Soy kwa kazi kubwa walioifanya katika kufanya hili wasilisho. Sasa tunapotaka kuelekea katika chakula chetu cha mchana, wakati huu ninataka kwanza kuwakumbusha waheshimiwa mawaziri wetu kwamba wataenda katika jopo upande wa Kilimanjaro floor ya pili, ambako sisi wengine sasa tutaenda upande mwingine wa chakula cha mchana ambacho kitakuwa upande wa nje wa mkutano huu. Utakapotoka nje ya ukumbi huu utaweza kufika upande na kwenda mkono wa kulia ambako utakuta mabawabu watakao kuongoza wapi chakula kitakuwa kinapatikana. Na cha muhimu ni kwamba baada ya chakula cha mchana tutaweza kurudi hapa, na katika huu ukumbi mkubwa kutakuwa kuna washiriki watakao kuja kujadili mambo kadha wa kadha saa 8:30, na hii inatupa dakika 40 za kuweza kupata chakula cha mchana. Kwa nataka niwakumbushe kwamba saa 8:30 tutarudi katika ukumbi huu. Ukiachana na ukumbi huu tutakuwa tuna majadiliano ya nchi husika, zitakuwa katika mikutano tofauti tofauti ya vyumba vidogodogo ambako watu watakutana. Kutakuwa kuna vyumba 5 ambako watu watakutana huko wa nchi husika, kwa ajili ya kufanya majadiliano na wadau, na hapo tutaanza saa 8:20. Kwa hiyo tutaanza dakika 10 mapema kabla mkutano mkubwa wa chumba hiki. Na hivyo ukiwa unakuja kwenye hiki chumba kikubwa au mkutano ukumbi huu mkubwa, tutakutana saa 8:30, lakini ukienda kwenye vyumba vya mgawanyiko tutakutana
Haki. My name is Nishati. My name is Nishati. They call me the Haki Wakuu. sax.
Angelina. Joe, just Joe, just. Where is PS Mramba? I'll stand. Stand.
Mesdames et messieurs, nous vous invitons à prendre place, s'il vous plaît. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. As you can see, our speakers are ready to start the panel. Distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, ravis.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to find you in this plenary hall after this fantastic lunch that was accompanied by an extraordinary orchestra. And now we come back to thinking about a key stage of our program, a panel that is going to explore the opportunities and challenges for the implementation of the Continental Energy Master Plan and the single electricity market. In order to guide this debate or conversation, I no longer have to introduce to you Kevin Kariuki, who is already on the stage and who is going to deliver a short speech, and perhaps he will also introduce the panel, otherwise I will do it myself. We have Mr. Shambir Bab, who is at the Ministry of Energy at the Republic of Tanzania. And then we have the Secretary of State from Germany, Joseph Ganga, at the GAPPP, and Dr. Victoria Kwaka, Regional Vice President for East Africa and Southern Africa of the World Bank Group. And finally, Francesco La Camera, General Director of IVRENA. Dr. Kariuki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Honorable ministers here present, the COP29 President, Mr. Babayev, ladies and gentlemen, our next session is on Africa Continental Power Master Plan, or CMP as we fondly refer to it, currently being developed by Africa Union Development Agency, or AUDA-NEPAD. CMP is the foundation of a future continent-wide interconnected power system that will ultimately underpin what we call the Africa Single Electricity Market, or just AFSEM. To help us understand the initiative better, we have the representative of the Africa Union Commission, Mr. Kamugisha Kazaura, who will give us a general overview of the Continental Power Master Plan and AFSEM, of the progress to date, and how the AU perspective on AFSEM could support the objectives of Mission 300. Over to you, Kamugisha.
Is it on? Thank you very much, Kevin, Excellencies and distinguished participants. I'll start by expressing our sincere thanks to the World Bank and the African Development Bank for being associated with the M300. To be associated with this summit as well as the M300. We've heard a lot from this morning on what the M300 is. However, one needs to know that M300 is not anchored in the sky. We have a continental initiative, which is a flagship project of the Agenda 2063, called the Africa Single Electricity Market, and its component, the Continental Power System Master Plan. The Africa Single Electricity Market intends to establish one of the world's largest electricity market, comprising of 55 African member states. The main objectives of the Africa Single Electricity Market is to create or facilitate the creation of an integrated, competitive, and harmonized electricity market within the continent. It became very apparent that in order to accelerate energy access within the continent, we have to take a regional integration sort of approach. So the African Union Commission, working very closely with AUDA-NEPAD as well as its partners, have been focusing on implementation of infrastructure, energy infrastructure projects in the continent as well as the market, which will assist in attracting investment, pulling private sector financing, as well as identify the gaps and barriers of creating this market. Currently, Kevin, as you have asked, the roadmap we have for the fully operationalization of the Africa Single Electricity Market, we expect by 2040 we'll have full operations of this market. What we're doing at the moment as the AUC, working with our partners, including the power pools and the regional regulators, we're developing instruments. These are the key instruments and mechanisms which will facilitate us develop or support harmonized tariff mechanisms. I think we heard some of these being highlighted this morning in the fire chat. We're also working on developing protocols guidelines, and regulations which are very key, which will facilitate the trading of electricity within the power pools and inter-power pools, which means within the regions. And in addition, to be able to facilitate this, we are working in enabling and establishing, as well as capacitating the regional regulators with the market rules, which will help in also facilitating the trading between the power pools. If you allow me, Kevin, just to conclude, is there is a very good, or I should say the M300 is fully aligned with our continental initiatives of the AFSEM and the CMP as Agenda 2063 flagship projects, in the sense that they all are targeted to financing concrete actions which will accelerate energy access within the continent, attract private sector investment, bring out the needed reforms in the electricity sector, provide regional of power integration, as well as expanding markets. And as I close, Kevin, if you allow me, is what we believe is we need to build synergies and harmonize on these various initiatives so that they will complement each other and we can attain both objectives of the AFSEM CMP and the Mission 300. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Kazaura. Next, I'll go to Secretary of State, Jochen Fraschbach of Germany's Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, or BMZ. We've heard from the AUC of the efforts they are making to develop CMP and the Africa Single Electricity Market. But we also understand that BMZ is finalizing a 16.5 million euro project that is aimed at strengthening key Pan-African actors and supporting the Africa Single Electricity Market and CMP. Please tell us more about this project, because it becomes a very interesting part of the jigsaw.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon to everybody. I just want to continue where I ended in the previous panel when I said, apart from the financing, also regulation is essential. And I would say the African single electricity market and the CMP are very much in the core of what needs to be done cross-border on the continental level. I would go even a bit further. BMZ is not only cooperating in the energy, on the energy markets and energy systems with our African partners, but also on the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I would say, no, I am convinced it's impossible to create an African Continental Free Trade Area without a single African electricity market. And it is also impossible, or maybe not impossible, but extremely cost-intensive to reach Mission 300 or even more the overall 2030 agenda target, providing electricity for each and everyone, not for 100 million, not for 200 or 300 million, for each and everyone. So also for this one, the integrated market is essential. And maybe I can share here from the European perspective that without creating the single European electricity market, our German energy system would not be as advanced as it is now. It would be much harder to reach our goal of carbon neutrality by 2045 without this integration on the continental level. And as we are convinced that this is the right way to go, apart from our bilateral cooperation, regional cooperation, the support for the African Union institutions on creating this ASFAM and CMP is of highest value for us. And therefore, as you said, I try to avoid in the first session to come out with all the numbers, what we are providing, how many millions and billions and there. But here I think, although it's not the biggest number I could mention, 16.5 million technical assistance, to the AU level as well as for the South African power pool to go along this way is something I'm really happy to announce here, and I hope that this will be a fruitful way forward.
Thank you very much, Secretary of State. That's a true partner who has seen our vision and has decided to join us in actualizing that vision. Before we go to somebody else, I think Director Amin, we've heard from Kamugisha or Kazaura on AFSEM and CMP, and we've also heard that Germany is going to give you additional resources, or give us additional resources to further develop these tools. I think at the end of the day, the aim is to convert CMP and AFSEM into tangible physical assets that will interconnect the entire continent. What is AUDA NEPA doing in this regard?
No, it works. You don't have to switch. Just talking.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm speaking here on behalf of Madame Nerdos Bekele-Thomas, our Chief Executive Officer.
Just hold on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm speaking here on behalf of Madame Nerdos Bekele-Thomas, our Chief Executive Officer at AUDA NEPA, actually, to make sure that we move the implementation of the CMP AFSEM. We are basically investing, as of now, with the support of African Development Bank, but also BMZ and other partners, in two things, which is the phase 3 of the CMP. Number one, strengthening building capacity of member states, utilities, but also regional power pool. That's number one. And then number two, at the same time, investing into long-term planning. The objective here, obviously, is to strengthen national and regional transmission network. As you know, we really need to invest about $30 billion in a transmission system between now and 2030 so that we can unlock the path for achieving the objective of the CMP. We need as well to scale up renewable energy projects, invest more in solar, wind, hydro, so that we can actually achieve the projected objective of 653 gigawatts of clean energy needed by 2040. And we are doing that through investing into early project preparation. And that's what actually AUDA NEPA does, again, with the support of our partners. And another aspect is to fast-track the cross-border interconnection. This is crucial. We are focusing on critical regional projects, such as operationalizing the East African power pool, but the Central Africa power pool, but also the North Africa power pool, by bringing them actually support. And we are also supporting the independent power transmission operators. This is extremely important. The objective here is really to attract the $1.3 trillion, which is actually needed to increase our power generation capacity. But to be able to do that, we also need really to fast-track the investment needed to build and operationalize the national and regional and cross-border transmission lines. That's actually the job we are doing at AUDA NEPA. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come to you next, Joseph. We've heard about this concept of CMP and AFSEM. Now we think about real connections. Joseph Nganga is the Vice President of Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. You have been leading engagements with governments in the past few weeks on the Dar es Salaam Declaration. Based on these engagements, how do you envisage that the Dar es Salaam Declaration will complement or help or operationalize the continental initiatives such as AFSEM or CMP that you've heard about?
Thank you, Vice President Kevin, and thank you for having me on the panel. I think the declaration captures exactly what the CMP and the AFSEM seeks to achieve, which is a clear confirmation that the work that's being done is critical to Mission 300 and to achieving electrification. Why do I say that? Because of three things. One of the 5 principles in the declaration is regional integration. Why? Because you extract a lot of value from leveraging each other's resources and assets in the most optimal way. You cannot do that without regional power pools. You can't do that without the Continental Master Plan, and so that is perfectly aligned. The second is the declaration's point 6 to drive private sector engagement. Private sector, particularly large-scale private sector, wants to build large projects. Large projects oftentimes are too big for just one country. By being on a regional power pool, you're able to supply hundreds of megawatts of solar in a very efficient way, thus lowering the cost per kilowatt hour, while ensuring regional power sustainability. So that's the second bit. And the third bit, I think, is in terms of policies and regulations. Governments, presidents tomorrow in the declaration will sign off on their commitment to implementing the right regulatory environment to drive Mission 300, of which one of them is regional integration. If a country prepares its policies and regulations only for themselves, they might lock out the optimization by regional integration. So by looking at it from a regional perspective, the policies and regulations will be encouraging for the ASEAN Continental Master Plan conversation. We have had conversations with private sector, civil society as well, to make sure they support the declaration, and you will hear the same exact points being mentioned. So incredibly complementary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I think now we've developed the concept of CMP. We've decided that we can actually have the physical assets, but now we need the money. So that means I come to you, Dr. Kwakwa, World Bank Regional Vice President for Eastern and Southern Africa. The Continental Master Plan projects that the cumulative investments of approximately 1.3 trillion will be required for generation and cross-border transmission infrastructure by 2040. By any stretch of imagination, that's a lot of money. What do you see as the role of MDBs, such as the World Bank and the African Development Bank groups, in implementing the Continental Power Master Plan to ultimately actualize the Africa single electricity market and translate it into a reality?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. Before I come to your question, let me say again what has been said by previous speakers, and particularly Joseph, the importance of power market integration and power trade in Africa. I think increasingly this is seen as a cornerstone of sustainable development on the continent. It will allow us to tap and to share economical sources of power and also promote energy security. So it's super important for what we're trying to do, the Mission 300. It's been very nicely explained. And I personally feel that Africa as a continent has the resources it needs to provide access to every single African, and also to power the economies on the continent in a way that really drives growth and development. But we can't do this without integrating our markets and trading our power resources. So super important. You've talked about, and that's why, as Joseph said, it features prominently in the declaration. It also features prominently in the energy compacts that the countries are preparing. And so all of us recognize this and accept it. And I thank you for the work that Oda Nepad is leading in this regard. Now, what role for MDBs? I think MDBs come in a variety of ways. First, as you said, or alluded to, the financing, so bringing the money, and particularly helping to tap concessional money, both from the AFDB, from the World Bank, of course, from other partners. But it's not just about bringing money. I think the volumes are important, and we're all stepping up on the volumes. It's also important that we're working in a way that we use concessional money to catalyze private money, because you need both public and private resources. The amounts are huge. So that's one thing. And we also need to work in ways that bring innovation. You know, we can't do business as usual if we're really going to accelerate the pace of electrification and the integration of the market. And so all of these are important. And this, I think we recognize. Mention the policy and regulatory support that needs to come. And this is another area where MDBs like the World Bank and the AFDB can support and building the capacity of operators, enforcing regulations, the ability to enforce regulations and really make the markets function well. I would say that a very important element also is partnerships. You know, nobody can do it alone. The World Bank can't do it alone. The AFDB can't do it alone. We have to really work together to make this different and to make this work and to get to the single market that we're seeking to do. Let me quickly give a couple of examples of some of the work that the World Bank has been doing. I would say first, just in terms of volumes for the market integration agenda, between 2017 and now, we've mobilized about $7 billion for the market integration agenda, a lot of it in concessional money. To give concrete examples of some of the projects, we've just in 2022 saw the achievement of the Kenya-Ethiopia interconnector, which is now allowing Kenya to buy up to 200 megawatts from Ethiopia, and that could go as high as 400 megawatts. And again, that was done in partnership, not just by the World Bank, but with AFDB, and then with Agence France Développement. So partnerships are super important. We also have the Malawi-Mozambique line that is going to get completed this year. That again is a partnership with the World Bank, with the KfW and other European partners. And then we're also playing in the policy and capacity building space through the support of generous partners like Norway, Sweden, through SMAP support. So these are some of the things that we've been doing. Going forward, you know, we're stepping up and we're going to do more, aligned with Mission 300. And particularly moving from project by project approach to long-term program approaches. And so we've recently launched what we call the Regional Energy Trade, Transmission Trade and Decarbonization Platform, which will run alongside Mission 300 for at least the next 5 years, a little bit more, which is an effort to really provide support, accelerated or enhanced support to the Southern African and the Eastern African power pools. So we're calling it Retrade, and I'm pleased to say that just last week our board approved a 1.26 billion of the Retrade for the Southern African power pool that will really over some years support the development of energy trade in the Southern African power pool. The first project that's been approved is the Zambia part of the Tanzania-Zambia-Kenya corridor, which is super important because when it's achieved, it will bring into being the last part of that corridor that links East and Southern African power pools, which will create geographically the largest power market globally. You know, so that's really transformative and would really make a huge difference. And of course, we're working with others. In terms of innovative financing, we're working with IFC to put in place this transmission infrastructure finance facility, which is really the blended finance idea of bringing concessional resources to help address some of the issues around high risk and the cost of transmission infrastructure for the private sector, so that you incentivize the private sector to come in and do some of what it needs. I think at the center of this is really looking at transmission as something that the private sector can do. In the past, we've always looked at this as public sector, but part of the innovations is really coming in and supporting private sector to do more, and there is scope for that to happen. So let me close again by stressing the partnerships between, of course, the public and the private philanthropies, but importantly, the partnerships between the MDBs. And we're working closely with the AFDB in Mission 300, and we'll look forward to doing some more to make sure that we can seize the opportunity of market integration to achieve the bold ambition of Mission 300. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Thank you.
Being an electrical engineer, I can actually see electrons flowing from Ethiopia to Kenya through the Kenya-Ethiopia interconnector, to Tanzania through the Kenya-Tanzania interconnector, from Tanzania to Zambia through the Zambia-Tanzania interconnector, and to the Southern African power pool. I think this is what we are. This is the essence of the Africa Continental Power Master Plan, and I think the infrastructure is going to be in place and result in actual trade throughout the continent. So I think finally, Mr. Francesco La Camera, who is the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency, I have one question for you. How can frameworks like the Africa Continental Master Plan and the Africa Single Electricity Market act as catalysts for achieving the goals of Mission 300, and how is IRENA supporting these efforts?
So thank you, Kevin, for your question, and also for having IRENA here in Dar es Salaam. You know that first of all, I like to commend the African Development Bank, the World Bank, for the 300 million initiative, and try to put the contribution of IRENA in the context that I'm presenting briefly. So first of all, we have to understand why Africa has been kept out in some way from the energy transition and the strong development of renewables around the world. We know that really a minimum part of investment in renewables has been made in the continent that has potential to provide 1,000 times the electricity needed by the world. In our point of view, there are three structural barriers that are slowing the progress of renewables and the energy transition in Africa. The first one is the lack of infrastructure. We are complaining that the cost of capital is very high. Sometimes I always like to repeat that the cost of capital is not the illness, but it's just the symptom. So the fact that it is so difficult to invest in Africa in electricity. And why? Because there is a structural lack of infrastructure. What I'm trying repeating now from a few years, that when the process of reform of the multilateral financial institutions, the question is not only to have more inclusive decision-making processes or provide for having more loans or grants. The problem is for what? In my point of view, the multilateral financial institutions should be focused on the building on the infrastructure that is needed to support the new energy system that is coming. This must be the focus of the multilateral financial institutions. Also they have not the capacity, the financial capacity for doing that. But if there is a clear plan on what they intend to do in Africa, it will be much easier to associate the private capital and leveraging and work on the basis of partnership. So the first thing, in my point of view, is infrastructure and as a principal focus of the multilateral financial institutions. And then we go to the second barrier that we see, the lack of the market that is designed for having more renewables. And if you don't have a single power market, how this could happen? It will not happen. So first infrastructure, second work on policies and legal environment that allow the market of electrons works. Third is that a distributive energy system is much more resilient, based on renewables, is clean, and provide 3 times jobs that usual investment in fossil fuel on others. But the fact is that it could be also more difficult to manage that essentialized energy system based on fossil fuel. So we need to have institutions that are ready to manage this kind of system. We need professionals that are fitting with the needs of the new energy system. So these are the 3 main barriers. And so this is the reason the 300 million initiative is fitting well, and what we are doing. So the fact that IRENA has been proud partners of the building of the Continental Master Plan, we have provided with the atomic energy the modeling for that. I think this is a very significant step in this direction. As has been important in our point of view, without NEPAD, all the training activity they are performing to make the institution able to manage what is coming and sort of to be leading on that. So this, we think, is important, the Mission 300, because it's fitting exactly in this context that we wish to guide. And what IRENA can do more on that. You know that following the Africa Summit in Nairobi in September 2023, we have launched the Accelerated Partnership for Africa. That is working well. We have, under the leadership of Germany, Denmark, the UAE, and the US, and the leadership of 11 countries that today are part of APRA, and we will be 15 before the summer. I think this could be try to connect with the compact exercise, because we have seen in our investing forum in Nairobi how this is working well. Now we have pipeline of projects. We are trying to make this project to be bankable. So there is a kind of a good line of work. And we also put in this our ETAF, our financial platform that has now 14 partners, including Africa 50, including the World Bank, including with the IFC and MIGA. I think this could be another instrument. So please present project to ARENA. We will try to work with you to assess, prepare the document for the bankability, assess the bankability, and going forward. And just to say them, in closing, how good has been the APRA initiative, that we are trying to showcase that. So we have launched with, in Azerbaijan, in Baku, an initiative, similar initiative for Central Asia. We will launch it at the end of this year, another initiative for Southeast Asia, but trying to remain to Africa. So, first, infrastructure, crucial role of the multilateral financial institutions, and all are we ready to work together for making this initiative to be a success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think we are coming to the end of the panel session, but I'll still ask just one generic question for all of you, and in particular for Victoria and Joseph and maybe Kamugisha, because we are partners in the Mission 300. So if you look at your crystal ball and envision this Africa Continental Power Master Plan has been developed, fully developed, and throughout the NEPAD and other partners, we have been able to build this infrastructure that facilitates this market trade. What is your vision, especially with regard to Mission 300? Let's start with you, Joseph, then Victoria, and then we'll come to you. 1 minute each, please.
Thank you, Kevin, and it's a very interesting question. I will answer it by quoting the Minister of Power from Nigeria, who in a panel somewhere in Barcelona said, if Kenya's peak demand is 4 hours ahead of Nigeria, and we each have 4 hours of peak demand, why are we both building peaking plants? Why can't we leverage each other's infrastructure to finance, to actually use the power more efficiently? That can only happen if you have a continental master plan and you have the infrastructure such that the picking plants in Nairobi are available when Nigeria needs them. So my vision is we have the infrastructure, physical, in existence, and I'm delighted that we're now moving towards private sector investment in this infrastructure, but also the trading mechanism to optimize for every country's needs so that we get the cheapest electron, we maximize the capital asset utilization towards a more competitive electricity market. Our continent will only develop if we have affordable power, and this is one key part of that.
Thank you. Victoria?
Thank you. Look, I mean, first of all, if it's been achieved, that's super exciting, and it makes everything much easier. What I would like to see is essentially a point that the minister from Nigeria raised this morning, that he's trading and not getting paid. You know, so how do we make sure that there are good rules of the game that encourage countries to trade? And nobody's saying, well, I can't get paid if I put my power out and I give it. And you have a situation where sometimes countries can be exporters, sometimes they can be importers, you know, depending on what their countries are going through, climate factors and so on. And so everybody benefits. And together we're pulling the continent forward, we're providing the access to individual households, and we're also powering our economies to pull this continent out of poverty and into prosperity.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I think Amin, very quickly, and finally Kazaura.
Thank you very much, VP Kevin. For Odanepat, first I would like to reemphasize that we consider M300 as a step toward the achievement of the objectives of the CMP AFSEM, multiply by 5 our power generation capacity and ensure universal access by 2040, while complying with our commitment toward just and equitable transition. That's number one. Number two, of course, as an organization, we are going to continue to contribute to it by making sure that our member states have really the capacity, and that's the reason why, and it was reminded by the DG of IRENA, why we are also investing very much into early project preparation, because early project preparation is the best tool, instrument to make sure that we de-risk projects so that we can actually really go toward that. And then thirdly, our vision, of course, is to make sure that those who can produce the cheapest and in a stable manner would actually contribute to give access to those who cannot produce. That's the reason why we are promoting AFSEM. So all in all, for us, M300 is a step, and a strong, solid step toward the realization of CMP AFSEM by 2040. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazaura, but also address Agenda 63, how this mission 300 fits into your Agenda 63, and we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I can think two quick things. One, what we envisage in 2040, once the AFSEM, CMP, the M300, and all the other continental initiatives are in place, that first thing, that we'll have electricity tariffs which are affordable throughout the continent, not the mismatch of tariffs we have, you know, if you go to south, north, east, or west of the continent, or central. The second aspect is we will have increased generation of renewables in our energy mix, and further, the continent further continues to be the lowest contributor to greenhouse gases emission in the world. So these are the two aspects which I can quickly envisage to see will happen in the next 15 years once we have AFSEM, CMP, M300, and all the other initiatives we have fully operational. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you'll all agree that we've had a very invigorating and insightful panel. Please join me in giving them a very hearty round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's do the exact same for Dr. Kevin Kariuki for an excellent job of moderating. Thank you very much, sir. Might I invite all of you for a photo opportunity, if I can invite you just to step forward, and the official photographers to please come and facilitate the photo opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, if I might have your attention while that photo opportunity is underway, to explain the final part of our program for this afternoon. We are now going to transition into a short series of really brisk and really concise conversations. We're going to be calling up onto the stage the moderator and their panelists. In most instances, 2 or 3 panelists at the very most. And the view here is to really shine the spotlight on some of the challenges and opportunities in the sector. Before I call up our first of these sessions, let's please give our panel a final round of applause as they descend stage. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Madam, thank you very much. Standing by now, ladies and gentlemen, to speak to the question of off-grid and the productive use of energy, it's my pleasure to invite in the role of moderator, Manoj Sinha, the co-founder and CEO of Husky Power Systems. And as Manoj comes up, thank you, Manoj, please let me also call on Clemens Callis, the CEO of Signum Capital, as well as Matthias Charles Yabe, the CEO of Aquafresh. Let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please. Thank you very much.
Just so you know, I'm taking my CEO's place, William Brent. Just so you know. And you're taking this?
Oh, William Brent. Okay. Just a quick, a small deviation. William Brandt is standing in for his CEO, Manoj Sinha, and will therefore take on the role of moderating this session. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, inviting you to lean in to engage. These sessions are going to be fast-paced and short, and so we're looking forward to your attention and your participation. Over to you, William.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. As mentioned, this is going to hopefully be a fast-paced discussion. I am not going to stand at the podium, but sit here with the other panelists. We have an interesting mix of people here. We have a very early stage company working in Ghana and looking to expand into additional countries in Africa doing cold storage and e-mobility. Aquafresh, and we also have one of the leading debt providers in our space, Signum Capital, Clemens Callis, as mentioned, and I'm William Brent, the Chief Marketing Officer at Husky Power. We're a growth stage mini-grid developer, so it's a little bit of an interesting combination on both on the practitioner side, but also on the finance side. So I think I'd like to kick off this conversation. You know, there's been a lot of discussion around productive use, so-called productive use, but I think that it's a very amorphous term that people often interpret in very different ways. So I thought I'd begin by asking Matthias and Clemens, you know, sort of how you define productive use. What is productive use to you?
Hi. So for me, I think productive use of energy has to do with making use of different energy sources to ensure that it creates economic value, in that it's able to help create job opportunities and then improve livelihoods of people.
Comments?
Okay, so I struggle with this term as much as probably many of you, and in some way as a provider of capital, to me that term doesn't really capture what the essence is of what we're trying to do. I mean, ultimately, we're in the business of supporting new companies in developing and implementing new business models, and as providers of credit, i.e. lenders, we need to make sure that the money comes back to our investors with a certain return. Now, ultimately, in the broader DRE space that we're looking at, what we're looking for is businesses that deliver ultimately green electrons and use those for different purposes, some of which maybe what traditionally is defined as productive use, which could be solar pumps and other machinery. But in the end, what we are looking for is business models that can that can catalyze the use of electricity. And we're not so much hung up about whether it's called productive use or not. We want to see businesses that grow, and with that growth, the electricity consumption will ultimately go up, which is what drives businesses, their performance, their profitability, and ultimately allows us to earn a return.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as a mini grid developer, everything we do is we would consider productive use, right? We are electrifying communities. We're doing appliance sales and credit financing to allow for both households and commercial users to actually take advantage of the electricity for productive purposes, but we wouldn't call it productive use. It's just part of our business. It's a utility business model with services added on that allow for greater economic activity, job creation, business creation. So, for us, when that term became more current in the discussion, we looked at it and said, well, this is what we've been doing for 16 years. So it's a little bit of a difficult concept for a mini grid developer to get their head around, just because it's built into what we do from the very beginning. So we're a utility. So go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe to put this in context of how, as a financier, we approach this. Matthias, William and I sat down beforehand and discussed a little bit about this very topic, and I was trying to learn about Matthias's business. He's a social enterprise that provides cold storage for farmers in rural locations that don't have access to cold storage, right? So clearly that's a productive use conversation, but my questions to him revolve around other topics. So I go and ask him, okay, Matthias, how long have you been in business, and how are you growing your business? What is it that's required to roll out your solution? So Matthias, maybe you can repeat a little bit what you do and what it takes to scale this business.
Right. So at AkuFresh, we are a social enterprise, youth-led, that is based in Ghana. And then our goal is to ensure that we are providing renewable energy solutions to help smallholder farmers improve their livelihoods and also ensure post-harvest management. And because currently about a third of all food produced every year is lost, and just in Africa, 40% of food produced do not get to consumers. And these are as a result of lack of technology and even energy at this local level. So by offering solar-powered cold storage preservation units, we are ensuring that farmers extend shelf life of crops from 5 days to 21 days. And we are doing this at the farm gate. So we offer a decentralized solar-powered storage unit, which will help smallholder farmers to store their crops at the farm gate, helping them extend the shelf life and look for market. That is the business model. Around it is the fact that we offer this as a service using the pay-as-you-go model, where farmers get to pay 30 cents for each 20 kg crate worth of fresh produce.
So Matthias, you mentioned that you've already pivoted your business model, from more of a services-oriented model to one that's more about build, own, and transfer to local farmer collectives that actually, pay for and then operate the asset. Why? Why did you make that pivot? What forced you to make that pivot? What were the decisions that were behind that pivot?
Right, that's a very good question. So, as a very early stage social enterprise, one challenge we faced, with even regards to speaking to investors, is that they do not really see economic growth because it costs a lot to set up our product. And organizations and banks who will now finance the product. So they buy the product from our end, we manage it for 1 year, and then train local community members to take ownership of that. So they buy the product from our end, we manage it for 1 year and then train local community members to take ownership of it. And also looking at farmer cooperatives who will be able to also make an initial deposit of the, to own the storage unit, and then have a payment plan with support from local banks and other institutions to be able to help them manage it. With this, it is as that kind of burden of now going to look for money to set up the units and then scale.
So,
thank you.
So I'm going to jump in here because I think here we get to the real challenge of what we're all trying to address. I mean, clearly, providing cold storage, it has to be a good thing. Overall, there's no debate about it. Yeah, we manage both credit funds that can lend to a business like this, and we're also a manager of a venture fund that supports early stage businesses. So I turn around to Matthias and say, okay, yeah, we have a fund that can give you $5 million in loans to scale up your business, but in order to do that, we require a certain amount of equity, i.e. owner's capital in the deal. So I go to him and say, you come up with $2 million of equity, yeah, and then we can have a discussion about $5 million of debt. And then Matthias turns to me and says, this is great, but I mean, getting equity is really difficult, and we've started talking to a number of venture capital funds out there. Yeah. So then I change my hat, take off my credit hat, and put on my venture hat, and I said to him, okay, Matthias, so I'm on the investment committee of our venture fund. The first question I ask when I get presented a deal is how quickly can you grow, and what kind of multiple on my investment am I going to get? And I say to him, by the way, in this current environment, my fellow IC members are very wary of very asset-intensive business models that need, in addition to venture equity, need a whole bunch of credit. So then I turn back to Matthias and ask him what he's going to do. But maybe rather than ask him and put him on the spot, I'm going to turn to William, because he's gone through this process, and maybe he can give a little bit of better insights into how this process of starting a venture takes you on a road to ultimately having a functioning and profitable business, I hope.
So, well, let me ask you first. So, I mean, you, I believe, have a development mandate within your fund, correct, in Signum? Mm-hmm. So who defined for you, or did you find for yourself, this focus on asset-light versus asset-heavy business models? Because mini-grids are also an asset-heavy business. We struggle to raise equity and debt just like you do, Matthias. But I'm curious, if you don't mind, like, what is the development finance community, what's their thesis, and how did that come about? Is it the LPs who are driving that? Is it you that's driving that? Where does that point of view come from?
That's an excellent question, actually, because the investors in our venture fund are development finance institutions that would all subscribe to the developmental outcomes and the necessities of a business like Matthias's or mini-grids. At the same time, the venture model follows a very specific trajectory of generating returns for its investors. It relies on sort of relatively rapid growth. It also requires most companies to be able to transact outside of their home market, which typically is too small to gain, to allow them to gain the size that they can ultimately exit at the valuations that's required for a typical venture funded model. I think of it as a first stage investment, a seed investment followed by 2 or 3 rounds of capital. At each stage, the venture capital universe requires the valuation to go up by a factor of, I mean, name it, 3 to 5 times. So you quickly see that for a company to be successful, a venture investor needs to see being able to have a valuation of $100 million. I'm picking some relatively random numbers in orders of magnitude. Then I can look at, and so that's not necessarily imposed on us by the development community that funds us. It's the way the market works, because even development finance institutions want their money back, and in the venture world, that's the way to an exit.
Well, we could have a longer conversation about the development finance community and whether they're headed in the right direction, but we'll leave that aside for now. To answer your question, I mean, mini-grids, I think most mini-grid companies start in our industry by thinking just about supply. and thinking that if you can generate and sell electrons, that you'll be able to cover your costs and make a profit. In rural communities, peri-urban communities where there's relatively little economic activity, that's a non-starter. We learned that the hard way. We almost failed as a company. And what we came to realize was that unless you focus both on supply and demand, that you can't come to a profitable business model. And demand for me is essentially productive use, right? Whether it's household or business, if you can create that demand and actually allow for those communities to be productive, then you've solved a big part of your problem, is making sure that you're sweating that asset and using the electricity generation asset to its fullest as much as possible. So that was a really seminal moment for us in terms of realizing, okay, if you're going to do this, you have to look at both the generation side and the demand side, and make sure that those two things are very much aligned.
Yeah, and maybe to pick up on what you said about the sort of the broader financial community, yeah, I guess the shortcomings that we are responsible for is that in order to balance supply and demands, there are enough factors outside of everybody's control. Yeah, we need to be able to provide some visibility on where the financing can come from.
Yeah,
and that is difficult, and we haven't done a good enough job, and I'm sure critical to yours and your success.
Matthias, we've talked about raising equity as being one challenge for you. What are the other major challenges that you face as a young startup?
Right. So some of the challenges have to be working with grassroots, people at the grassroots level, because sometimes it's a challenge for people at the grassroots to be able to adapt to modern technology. So you have to usually spend more time trying to educate and create awareness, and also get people to buy into the idea, because you wouldn't want to develop a solution that will end up not being used. Of course, they face a problem, but then if you do not really offer that kind of awareness, it becomes difficult for them to accept the product. So that is usually a challenge that we face, because people usually at that level tend not to adapt easily to modern technology. So that is one challenge. And another challenge has to do with sourcing equipment, because it's usually expensive. I mean, as a mini-grid company, you understand that it's really huge investment, especially investing in renewable energy. So that high upfront cost, and even sourcing the materials, and the materials not being available locally in that quantity is also a challenge. So we end up spending time looking for the equipment we need to put together our technology. That also becomes a challenge in terms of scaling.
But I want to ask you. So what's the thing preventing you, or presenting a challenge to you to invest more capital in this space? Because it's been identified as a market opportunity worth tens of billions of dollars, right? So that's a huge opportunity. Why not invest more?
So I was just about to ask you. Yeah. So we hear of all these challenges, and based on Husk, how long did it take you to get on top of these challenges and get to the stage where this business was per se on a stable ground?
Well, I think so the current version of the company is about 10 years old. It's taken us about 8 years to get there.
Okay, so that's part of your answer, right? We're looking at a lot of businesses like Matthias's, and we know that on average, in this ecosystem that we work in, companies take 8 to 10 years to reach profitability. So he tells me it's going to take him 3 years. Yeah, I add a little bit of fat to it, because I know nothing ever works out the way it does. So I'm already having to plan for a business that needs to access capital for the next 5 to 8 years. This is going to be through I don't know how many macro cycles in which investors come and go. Yeah. So that is my problem. I have not enough visibility on the future to know that if I put money in now, someone's going to come and follow in 3 years' time to take the business to the next level.
Yeah.
And I would like to hear your solution to that.
We deploy our capital to build assets so that we can electrify people. If we're going to add any additional value-added services like productive use into what we do, we still need grant capital to de-risk those business models. And I would say, and Matthias, you disagree with me if you like, I haven't seen a whole lot of productive use business models that have scaled commercially. And, maybe e-mobility, maybe irrigation, but, we've tried cold storage, we've tried rice milling, we've tried e-mobility, we've tried many different things, but we still don't know ourselves what's scalable and commercially viable. So anyway, I think I'm being asked to wrap up, so I want to make sure that we leave a little bit of time. So we're here for Mission 300, right? This big initiative, productive use is part of it. I'd like to ask you both what you'd like to see from Mission 300 to help your business or investments perform the way that you'd like them to.
Yes, let me start and then Matthias can give the final touch to it. I think there are two themes that I think are very critical and fit very well into this whole event. Yeah, one is time. Yeah, we spend too much time deliberating over how we do things and not enough time trying to get to solutions. So we need to shorten that 10 years to a much smaller time horizon. And the other thing is we need to grow markets. And we need to grow markets by allowing businesses like Matthias to expand, whether it's from Ghana to Nigeria or across the continent, in a much more seamless way, so that the addressable market gets bigger, the opportunity gets bigger, and capital is more excited about where the journey could end.
Right. For me, I think Mission 300 should also prioritize collaborating with younger organizations, because usually what we usually see is most of these initiatives work with really large organizations, and it doesn't really give younger organizations that kind of experience as well. So when we go to investors like Clems, they always want to say, okay, what previous experience do you have, or how does your book look like? We do not really need very large capital, but at least if we are also plugged into a certain portion of implementing certain projects, it gives us that experience and that credibility to be able to reach out to more people for them to understand that what we are doing actually works to some extent, and then they're able to sort of give us that support. So plugging in younger organizations in this initiative is something that I think it should be a great game changer, so that investors like Clems will be able to support.
Okay, listen up, Mission 300. Matthias needs your support, so let's figure that out. Thank you both for an excellent conversation. Quick, short and sweet, as they say. Thanks so much.
Right.
Yeah, right on time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Un grand merci à nos...
A big thank you to our panelists and the moderator for the quality of their interventions. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we said that we will have successive panels. We have a lot to say this afternoon, and we will move on to a panel discussion called Mobilizing the Civil Society, and it will highlight the civil society actors in energizing Africa. To moderate this discussion, I am pleased to call Mr. Semkai Kilonzo, Executive Director of the Policy Forum in Tanzania. He is a well-known leader because of his engagement for participatory and inclusive solutions, and he will be moderating discussions between Ms. Sheila Oparaucha, Director of Energia, and Ms. Hadiza Abdul Mumini, Global Focal Point, SDG 7 Youth Constituency from Nigeria. Kindly welcome our moderator as well as the two panelists. A warm round of applause, please. Thank you.
For our panel.
How do you operate this? Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Semkai Kilonzo. I am from the Policy Forum, which is a network of civil society organizations working on governance and accountability here in Tanzania. We've got our network has about over 80 organizations brought together in their interest on issues around poverty reduction, equity, and democratization. So that's things around engaging civil society to energize Africa, which is our topic for this panel, is one of the key things that help reduce poverty reduction. So just really quickly to introduce the topic, we know Africa, and we've heard this morning and through the course of today, that Africa faces significant challenges in ensuring universal access to sustainable energy, and civil society organizations have emerged as critical agents, and they have a key role to play as agents of change in terms of contributing to policy advocacy, issues around their work with community-based solutions. Most of the times we've seen very good examples of innovative work being done, and their efforts to make energy access more inclusive. And last but not least, obviously, a huge role that they play in bringing government to account, duty bearers to account for the promises that they make. So without further ado, I'd like to let you know that we've got distinguished panelists here who will have stories and strategies of how civil society and youth can amplify their voices in energy policy and collaboration with key stakeholders. My first panelist is Sheila Aparocha. She's a leader in gender and energy, works for an organization called Energia, and has about 26 years experience in women's empowerment in energy access. Second is Hadiza Abdulmumini, and she's also done quite impactful work promoting youth leadership and equitable clean energy access and advancing clean cooking practices in Nigeria, and she's a global focal point for the SGD 7 in Nigeria. So really quickly, I'd just like to jump right in it. I have questions for both of you. First is, what inspired each of you to engage in the energy sector in Africa? I'll start with you, Sheila.
Thank you, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm humbled that you call me a leader. So it's an honor for me to be on this panel and to contribute to the discussion and discourse taking place at M300. To be honest, my entry into the energy sector was not particularly exciting. I was fresh out of university, an opportunity provided itself, and so I took that opportunity. But over the years, what has been more fascinating for me is to draw the parallels between my first job, which was a veterinary doctor after graduating from the University of Zambia, and my work at the intersection of gender and energy, supported by my second degree from the Asian Institute of Technology in Gender and Development Planning. What surprised me is that in both, you have to go beyond the obvious. When you're treating an animal, which is a client who doesn't speak to you, or when you are trying to address the challenges of women empowerment in the energy sector, what's obvious, it's the root causes, and what's obvious on the surface is not always the real picture. So when I take a gender lens to technical solutions, I'm forced to ask critical questions. Who is benefiting? Who controls the decisions over use? What are the power dynamics between those who have and those who do not have? And that's what really keeps me excited and keeps me motivated. Thank you.
Okay, and Hadiza, same question, but you also, a follow-up question would be, how do you see the role of civil society and youth organizations in shaping Africa's energy policy?
Okay, thank you. I think the inspiration for me was mostly because of the lack of stable access to electricity in my country. growing up, electricity was not stable, and the frustration for that would be just because you're unable to watch maybe some of your kids' shows, cartoons, and all of that. But as I was growing older, it became to be a bigger problem because you're unable to really work. It threatens your work. These days, most of the work are virtually. You need your computer, and oftentimes you are scared because you have a meeting and there's no electricity for you to power these gadgets that you have to use to attend the meetings. And then you come to see that it's even beyond the individual perspectives, it's even for the country itself, Nigeria. You see a lot of companies just piking up their investment and leaving because the profit is just going back to getting diesel to power up generators, and that's just not profitable. So I thought, what's the best thing I can do? Because if others can have stable electricity, then we can also have stable electricity. So I did the best way I know how, which is law and policy. And this is the shot of my own inspiration. Then in terms of the role of civil society organizations and youth organizations, I believe they play a very critical role in shaping Africa's energy future. And this is because you see that across the globe, youths in Africa, for instance, they are taking so much leadership in terms of exploring what are the sustainable energy solutions that are available. And together with these organizations, you see advocacy and policy influence. So they look at what are the best ways, what policies would enable us to promote and prioritize energy access. How can we expand sustainable energy solutions? So this is very, very important. And then secondly, they're able to hold the government accountable and private institutions accountable for their energy-related actions and policies. And then you talk about skilling and awareness. So let me give you an example with what we do in terms of awareness. So before I became the global focal point of the SH7 Youth Constituency, I was the regional focal point for West and Central Africa. So as a regional focal point, your responsibility is first to see what are those immediate needs in the organization for your own region. And the first thing we saw was for West and Central Africa, it's even very important for us to begin with the awareness in terms of what are those communities that don't even have energy access? Then what are the alternative sources? There's a lot of problems, for instance, in my own country with the transmission lines. So there's a need for you to really raise awareness on the need for decentralized energy solutions. So the first thing we did at that level was awareness campaign, the sustainable sources available, the consequences of all of these sources, among others. So this is in terms of awareness, one of the responsibilities. And then secondly, you also talk about fostering skilling, and after skilling, innovation. So right now, as the global focal point of the constituency, the role is to see what are the best ways to support youth. And one very important and interesting program we have is the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub. So it's a hub that gives room to all youths across the globe to come and showcase the youth-led energy projects that they have. And right now, what we are planning to do is to showcase them based on region, and they get access to capacity building, financing, mentorship, and some of the partners for these programs that we've had, IRENA, IEA, REN21, UN Energy, SE for All, among others. So this is one of the areas that you see youth organizations and civil society organizations creating that opportunity and allowing for a just and inclusive transition and also energy access. And then this is the same thing for skilling too. You look at areas that youth don't have skills and we're able to work with.
Okay, thank you. Now back to Sheila. Do you have examples of how civil society can play an effective role in energy policy?
Yes. Actually, my fellow speaker has already said everything that I want to say and also given excellent examples. But let me just, there's a saying, you have to know where you're coming from to know where you're going. And I think it's important if we step back, whether it is 2015 or 2021 when we had the World Summit of Sustainable Development and you couldn't talk about energy poverty, 2015 when you have the SDGs, on going forward, that civil society organizations were the first to start talking about, for instance, decentralized renewable energy, clean cooking solutions, before our governments and our private sector came on board. So I think it's very good to recognize that. And having said that, we're here in Tanzania, so I'll just give two examples. Tatedo You cannot work in the energy sector if you don't know about Tatedo. Tatedo has been a shining example for over 30 years, really bringing inclusive business models, testing them, making them proven business models. A lot of that we're using today, whether we're talking about multifunctional platforms that they started with, to mini-grids, to now using electric cooking and trying to make that affordable. So that's 30 years. The Tanzania Sustainable Energy and Gender Network, really working on empowering, creating a much more enabling policy environment for women in the energy sector, have been catalytic in working in partnership with the Ministry of Energy in Tanzania in developing the Sustainable for All Gender Action Plan. And right now are also innovating in village-level adaptation plans, not national, but village-level adaptation plans really driven by villages and aggregating them so that they can feed into district-level planning. Nigeria, I saw Habiba today, so I'm going to be remiss if I don't mention Society Renewable Energy Technologies and Solar Sisters. You know, when we talk about CSOs, it's not just NGOs. Yeah. We had mini-grids developers here saying they're not making profits. They are also part of the CSOs. Here, these are two organizations that over 10 years or more have empowered thousands of women entrepreneurs in very rural and remote areas in Nigeria where nobody else is. Nobody else is in these communities. I've been there to get business skills, deliver clean energy products, and even be innovative with digital literacy. Currently, Solar Sister is piloting a solar mill machine based in local communities, so you don't have to transport things, the long travel and the distance that women have to take in order to transport their farming products to mill. So those are two. And of course, your own organization that's working on accountability in the country.
Thank you. Sheila, again, just a follow-up question. How can gender considerations drive more inclusive and sustainable energy access outcomes?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So inclusive and sustainable outcomes, that's what we want to focus on. So within Energy's experience, we feel that there are 4 critical approaches. The first one is to end energy poverty for women. UN Women has said in their snapshot for 2024, and by the way, this year is the 30th celebration of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action that our member states committed to women's economic empowerment and gender equality. The last year that SDG 5 is going to be reviewed, but their report is still showing us the majority of poor women in the world are based in the continent, and the majority of those poor women are energy poor. So ending energy poverty is really important. A very interesting statistics that I saw was is that for every 100 men, there are 127 women. Now, what's interesting is the age group, and they're living in extreme poverty. So there are different levels of poverty. This is the group between 25 and 34. That means for the years that are supposed to be your most productive is the years that you cannot not afford or access energy. So that's going to be one. So we need targeted interventions, gender interventions that really put women at the center of, for instance, our Mission 300 contacts. And why I say intentional is because I recognize when our one of our moderators was speaking to our ministers, one of the questions she asked, if you're in the room, is about women's empowerment and gender equality. She added it into the questions, and none of our ministers answered that question. So we really do have to be intentional in making this difference. So that's one. The second one, I want to go beyond markets. Social safety networks. Let's be honest, there's still a large percentage of our population that are not going to afford even the most basic. We heard from the World Bank president that energy is a public good, it is a right. So social safety nets for those who cannot afford social security safety nets for those who cannot afford is really going to be critical. We also heard from the last speakers about how local communities are considered risk averse to adopting some of these technologies. That's not the case. It's not all about behavioral science. It's because they have very vulnerable incomes. You know, they have very little buffer for economic shocks. Right. So then if you're going to take something and you're thinking, how am I going to pay for it? How am I going to pay it off? You're going to be, of course, you're going to think twice before you take it on. If we have social safety networks that will allow people to afford this, it's really going to be important. So apart from the market, we also have to think of these other things. I know that you're asking me to finish. I'm going to just say yes, two statements. I'm looking at my good friend Dimfna, and I think on this panel where we have CSOs, we do have to repeat it. We have to think of holistically about SDG 7. SDG 7 has universal access to energy, which is universal access to clean cooking and universal access to electricity. So we need to have both. You can't do one before the other. Okay. We know that, so electricity needs to be a trailblazer for bringing clean cooking. And clean cooking because it saves lives. In fact, my 26 years of experience is going to allow me to be so bold as to say, if you do not have clean cooking in your initiative, it's a gender-blind initiative. It's going to increase inequalities. It's not pro-women. All right. So, okay, I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's bring youth into this. Hadiza, youth play a key role, obviously. How can we enhance the inclusivity of youth voices in the energy spaces?
Okay, thank you. I think one stark reality that we must acknowledge, which is why I'm so happy for this question, is at the tables where critical policies are being shaped, you simply do not find youth voices. You simply do not find youth there. And it's not because they don't want to be there. And youth have fresh perspectives, innovative ideas, and they hold the long-term impact of these policies that are being shaped today. They are rather seen as passive beneficiaries instead of the agent of change that they are, or the partners in shaping these policies. And I believe some of the reasons for these marginalizations is because maybe there's lack of trust in the capabilities of youth, or maybe there's no resources to engage them, or there's no knowledge of all these initiatives and activities that youth are putting to show their interest and their need to really shape all these policies that are being made. Now, these are my recommendations in terms of how youth can really be made inclusive and to help shape these policies. One is to have a formal youth engagement mechanism, a youth advisory council. And this was the case I saw in the UAE. In the UAE, United Arab Emirates, both public institutions, private institutions, government institutions, all these institutions that are required by law to have a youth advisory body. So for every policy that they make, you know that it has the perspectives of the younger generations contained therein. Then secondly, if the fear or the reason for not engaging youth is because there's fear of, or there's doubt as to their capabilities, then train them. Recently, I serve as the co-chair of the Arena Youth Council. Then we organized the Arena Youth Forum along the sidelines of the Arena Assembly. And a lot of youth from over 50 countries came. There was it was very, very intensive, but there was a lot of opportunities for youth, and they were able to be merged together with leading experts in the energy sector. And one thing that I realized was the UAE youths, they stood out. Some of them in the workshops I attended, they have served as negotiators, and they were sort of giving a workshop on that. They were aware of their country's NDCs, of their country's energy plans. So they have that sense of ownership. If you are able to train the youths and make them understand what the position is, then you give them that sense of ownership and you get to have more out of them. And then secondly, all these youth organizations, CSOs, invest in them so they could further amplify their impact. And then lastly, for emissions such as Mission 300, I think it's very important that we have a platform that removes all this geographical barrier, an online platform that allows you to have all the youths there. So at all times, from the beginning, middle, up until the end, you get to ask, and you hear without any filter, what are their thoughts, how is it going, what are their suggestions on this project. I believe this way is we'll be able to bring about youth inclusion.
Yeah, we just have a minute and a half, so I'll just jump to the last question for both of you. How do you think civil society can better collaborate with the other stakeholders, government and private sector? Yeah, you've got a minute for both of you.
Okay, so I'll just be quick then. Okay, so I believe the collaboration is very essential, as we're all aware, but oftentimes it doesn't happen because of some barriers: lack of trust, lack of communication, bureaucracy, red tape hindering of project implementation, or just different priorities and agendas. So if this, all these barriers could be removed, then the rules of the civil society organizations, youth organizations, can then they'll be able to work collaboratively with the government. The government does the policies, the private sector bring the investment, and the CSOs are the ones that are willing to go to the grassroots level. And for all this role, for instance, of the CSOs, you have the policy advocacy, scaling, fostering innovation. If they're able to do it together and work as one, it will have more impact. Oftentimes you see that the skilling itself, even the government officials, they do need it. Sometimes for these policies that are being made, you see that the CSOs can bring that evidence from the grassroots engagement that they've had, and you have policies that are more effective.
Thank you. Sheila, same question.
You. Yes, a minute and a half, but because this is the only, I think there are only 2 spaces in this conference where civil society is, please allow me to add an extra minute. I think we are entitled to that. We're going to be remiss if to respond to your last question about youth empowerment and women's empowerment if we don't talk about jobs and leaderships. We saw examples of wonderful leaders, including Her Excellency, the president of the country that's hosting us, but there are too few women in the sector. And as jobs are being created in the clean energy transition, this could go to youth and women. But also very much, from our experience, it's not so much on the supply side. Yes, we need to promote STEM education, but it's on when they get into these positions that the environment needs to be made safe for them to excel. So we're talking about anti-harassment policies, we're talking about equal opportunity policies. These are things that we really need to encourage in our sector. And now about civil society, I want to first, and I think we're all going to do that, we are going to underscore and acknowledge the engagement that we have on the 20th of January with Mission, with the Mission 300 initiative, where a statement was already made. So all our points were captured there. And just to underscore that, it was about inclusive multi-stakeholder processes and providing real leadership linked to that. It was about openness and trust in the relationships that we have. And part of that was really sharing timely information that we need. It was about funding our NGOs, particularly youth and women's organizations, but also community-based, to meaningfully engage in these. They do also need to have part of the funding, part of the billions that have been allocated should also go to civil society organizations. And the fourth is actually a shout out to us CSOs, and to CSOs like myself, the more established, more international, that we need to give way to our local African CSOs to lead the way. Let us come in and support them so that we together can have a collective voice. Rather than engaging in these initiatives one-on-one, we need to have a collective voice and really be, that will strengthen our position.
Can we end there?
Okay. So I'll end.
All right. Sheila and Isa, please, a warm round of applause for them. Been excellent.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and there you have it, the voice of civil society, loud and clear in the room. Thank you very much for your contributions, and to our moderator and our panelists. Again, we're moving at lightning speed, ladies and gentlemen, as we move to our next short and sharp, concise conversation. Its focus is on innovative finance, and particularly wanting to also include a perspective on local currency. It's my pleasure to welcome the CEO of the British International Investment. That is, of course, Mr. Leslie Marsdorp. Thank you for being here, Leslie. And joining him on stage is Jules Ngakam, the CEO of the Africa Guarantee Fund. Welcome, Jules. And Rachel More Oshodi, the CEO of Arm Harith, in particular the Arm Harith Infrastructure Investment Limited, rather. Ladies and gentlemen, we hand over now to Leslie to lead us in this conversation. Leslie, over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Like all the other sessions before this one, I believe that innovative finance is the most important subject for us over this conference, this summit. I say that because there is a search underway. We are going back to the laboratories, if you like, to find new ways, to find ways in which we can reinvigorate, retool the development finance system to